Hey, we got it right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are out there. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz. How you doing? We're set for another C# with CSharpFritz episode, and I am using the wrong keys there to try and adjust my scene. How's things, chat room? How you doing? My goodness, it's been a couple days. I feel like we've gotten through a lot here. Let me look at just over here. I'm going to take a look at the chat room. They're right there. Hello. Let me say hello. See, and gosh, I was doing some work here in the room, and I got my cameras adjusted a little bit there. There we go. Chris Jones is here. Moises is here from Sao Paulo. How you doing there? D-Flux is here. Is that Ajiba from Ivory Coast? M. Pulowski, Nitro Evil, good to see you. Our friends over there on Twitch. Anthony Park is dialed in from Miami. Charles Galuli is here. Dimitri from Ukraine. Hello, good to see you. Mr. Joe B is in the Netherlands. Got your mini cookies? Nice. Ready to rock some C#? Let's do that. We're going to spend some time learning today. It's always... I love learning here on Twitch and talking about what's happening with our programming languages and frameworks. So much fun, and it's even more fun because I get to talk to you. I want to hear from you. I want you to write in chat here, say hello like some of these fine folks, and I want to talk to you. Of course, we're going to acknowledge you and say hello there. To folks like let's see, Svalwa, Carlos Diaz from the Dominican. Good to see you, Nikolai Nulim. Hello. You just got time for some more C# learning? I think Soviet Doge forgot the shift on that C, but we got you there. How you doing there, Jose? D-Flux, under a fair amount of stress to get your Blazor project out the door. Ooh, good luck to you there. Mahesh, hello. Stony in Ohio. Hello, Hassan. Bentley Tube in Vietnam. Hello, good evening to you. Guarang is here. Ajay from India. Hoi, good evening to you. Hamed, Sandeep in India as well. Nick, howdy. Farhad in Ukraine. Oh my goodness. Hassan. Carlos Alarcon in Chile. Nice. Thaddeus in Nigeria. Shy Sharp says, good afternoon to Fritz and friends. So good to see you. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the Cyrillic there, but hello to you in Ukraine. Hamed, hello from Windows 11. Hello to you in Windows 11. We won't be using Windows today. More on that in a little bit. Let me see here. Is that Lug Velez in Colombia? How's it going? Norolo in Central Asia in Tajikistan. Good to see you. Rav is in London. Another Cyrillic name. I'm sorry. I don't know how to pronounce those. Hello to you in Russia. Naveen, PTI Costa Rica. I've got somebody whose name is all of Costa Rica. Good to see you. TG in New Jersey. How's it going there? Sabine in India. Mohammed in South Africa. Hello. Friends, it's good to see all of you. We went through last week and we spent time talking about errata, other questions and things that I kind of skipped over. I kind of skipped past in our learning about C#. This show is always dedicated to beginners. You might be an expert out there. You might be somebody who's been doing programming with C# for 2, 5, 10, even 20 years. But we want to stay focused. We want to stay very welcoming for those folks who are beginners. We want to encourage them. Ask questions. Let's talk. All the samples that I'm going to show you, they're available out on GitHub. You can download, walk through them at your own pace. You can rewind and rewatch the recording whenever you'd like. What's important here is that we answer your questions. We talk to you. I want to hear from you. I want to know what kind of challenges you have around the C# programming language, around .NET. And how we can make that better, or how we can help you out, get you a solution to move forward. Now, I'm not going to be able to look at your code here live on stream and say, oh yeah, here's where your bug is. But at least answer some questions around our topic, around the programming language. I can't answer questions about Windows 11. I can't answer too many deep questions about Visual Studio. During this session, we go on other sessions where we are more focused on those topics. But for me, today we're talking about C#. We're going to be talking about interfaces, abstract classes, inheritance. We're going to talk about error handling a little bit. So that's where we're going to be spending our time. I want to make sure that we get you some feedback if that's something that you've been struggling with, you want to work with. Let me look back at chat over here. Noleem likes the Gunners. Thank you. I'm glad you like the Gunner glasses. I'm a big fan of them. My eye doctor, after looking at my eyes on my last appointment, said, you need to start doing something about the blue light here. You need to work on this. Bartosz in Poland, good to see you. Ajay says, namaste. Well, namaste to you as well. Russian, is that Fazliev? Hello. Soviet Doge from 127001. I like what you've done there. Lenny the Rabbit is from 127001 as well. That's a networking joke. Avtuni from Georgia, the country, not the state. All right. Jaya Kumar from India. Good evening to you. Technosoft from Egypt. Am I going into dependency injection as well? That's going to be a couple weeks down. Next week, we're going to try and get into async, await, and multi-threading. Talk a little bit about asynchronous operations, multi-threaded coding, and how we can get you started with that. It's a very complex topic. There's a lot of different concerns in there. It's going to be a brand new session that I'm writing this week that we'll be talking about. You like the GitHub hat? Thank you so much. Ladybug in Singapore. I'm sorry. Listen to me. I can't even speak right. I need some more coffee. My positivity is infectious. How do you do it? I got a nice cup of Good Morning America, a cup of hot coffee. A little bit of pumpkin spice. Yeah, I went pumpkin spice today. All right, don't knock me on that. I went with the flavored pumpkin spice coffee. All right, chat room. I know some folks are like, pumpkin spice, but you know what? It's October here in the States, and gotta enjoy, gotta celebrate, gotta have a good time. It's New Zealand at 2 a.m. for Bucky. Oh my goodness, Bucky! I'm flattered you're staying up so late. This is being recorded for those of you who don't know, over on the YouTubes, the tube of all thing use. Is that how that works? I don't think that's how that works. You'll be able to find the recording of this if you're staying up so late and you happen to fall asleep. That's okay. You'll be able to catch back up. But I'm flattered folks are staying up late to tune in. Svetoslav from Bulgaria. You know what? That's the furthest east in Europe that I've traveled. Haven't been to Asia, haven't been to Africa. Bulgaria, I was in Czech Republic a couple years ago. But yeah, Bulgaria is about the furthest east that I've been, I think. So, good morning. Is it Amal or Ajmal? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Raul in Spain. How's it going there? Juanjo in the Canary Islands. Recommend to handle errors in railway-oriented programming style. Railway-oriented. I haven't heard that before. Hello to you in Serbia, Vlada. Good to see you. So, of course, I'm going to have some good music playing here in the background. We're going to get in. We're going to start talking about the topic. I want to make sure that you have links so that you can check out. And actually, I forgot to plug my mouse back in. My wireless mouse that I use from the other set. Let me get that. See, there's the other mouse being identified. Let me get you a link over to the GitHub repository where all things that we'll be discussing today you can get to, and you'll be able to clone, work with locally. There we go. There's a link for you out to the GitHub website. There it is. We're going to be in the notebooks, and we're going to be working on 0108 is the notebook we're going to be working on today, and I'll show you that from Visual Studio Code in just a minute. Now, for those of you who don't follow me on Twitch, that's okay. You can find me on Twitch. I am twitch.tv/CSharpFritz, just like my Twitter account, my GitHub, my Instagram, my PayPal, my TikTok. Yeah, TikTok. I'm CSharpFritz on TikTok also. But if you follow me over there, you know that I observe every October, and this is the fourth year running that we're observing. I think it's third. I might be the third. It might be it's probably the third. That we're observing Ubuntuber. Yeah, I took Ubuntu in October, and it kind of mashed them together, and we have Ubuntober. It's a month dedicated to Ubuntu Linux on my stream. And I figured I'd bring it over here to the Visual Studio channel and to the .NET YouTube, and we talk about working with .NET on Ubuntu Linux. So we're going to be going through, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code today, but we're going to be running Ubuntu Linux directly on the metal. No Windows subsystem for Linux involved here. No funny virtual machines. No, we're directly on the metal, and we're going to be using .NET on Linux, because .NET works everywhere. Whether you're running on Windows, Mac, or Linux, iOS, or Android, you can deploy .NET applications. It's great stuff, and we're going to get into it in just a little bit. Hey, Arshia, good to see you. I'm doing well. Allah Waba from Cairo. Hello, welcome in. Train style is boom, there's a big error, choo-choo. No, I don't think that's what they mean. Oh my goodness. Let me get some music playing in the background here. This is Stream Beats from our friend Harris Heller. This is music that's DMCA free, royalty free. You can play it wherever you'd like. Instrumental music that you can listen to. And that's not quite loud enough. There we go. Just there underneath things. You can listen to this wherever you'd like. You can find all the music to download at streambeats.com. There's also playlists there for Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Spotify. You can download the music if you'd like as well. Check it out, streambeats.com. Thank you so much to Harris Heller for making your music available for us to listen to while we write some code together today. Is Tudor or is it Itador? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. From Romania, welcome. Hello to you, Herbert from Taiwan. I know I'm starting to fail in my name pronunciations here. This is a bad thing. It's time for more coffee. So, let's think. What else do we need to do? We talked about Ubuntober. Said hello to everybody. We're about 20 minutes in here. I like to give it just a little bit of time to make sure that we have everybody dialed in that would like to be here before we get started. Let me see. Taking a look over here. Yeah, that number's not right. I knew that number wasn't right. Yeah. Hello to you, Olamide in Nigeria. Good to be here. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Yum Yum Rock says, Writer is a great IDE for Linux. However, it is a paid-for IDE. That's okay, right? Look, if you find great tools that help you do your job, you should support those developers, whether they're open source, whether they're closed source. If they're paid for tools, you should support them if you're making a living off of them, because you want to make sure that they continue making those tools. And let's face it, developers need to get paid in order to continue building cool things. So I encourage you, if you find some tools that you like, whether it's Visual Studio, whether it's some open source tool that has a sponsorship program on GitHub or a Patreon or something like that, go out there and support those developers. I'm using OBS, the Open Broadcaster software, to produce this video right now for you, and I'm a subscriber on their Patreon. You can go out there and you can see that I'm a paid subscriber, helping those folks, because I believe in this software. I want it to grow and continue being developed. Let's see. Hey, how's it going there? Terry, having some pecan. Is it pecan or pecan? Pecan pie flavored coffee with creamer in Arkansas. Oh, your Razorbacks just missed beating Ole Miss this weekend. College football was not kind to my Penn State Nittany Lions in Iowa City this weekend was not kind to them at all. But all the best to those Iowa Hawkeyes. Arshia says, whatever you use, Mac, Ubuntu, or Windows, you have the same I'm not sure, feature, and you have it's Ubeard. I'm kind of lost there on that one. I'm sorry. You have the same best features. Yes, absolutely. Russell, Writer has some open source licensing programs, student programs as well. Yeah, they do. They do. So, so take your pick. Find the tools that work for you, try them out, figure out how they fit into your workflow, and absolutely support those folks, especially if you're making a living off of them. Right? Folks that use Photoshop on a pirated license. Come on, you're making a living charging a lot of money and you didn't pay for Photoshop. Come on. So there's definitely things to be said for paying for quality tools, software, frameworks. But with Microsoft, all the Visual Studio Code, open source, free, anybody can use it. All of the .NET frameworks, free, open source, anybody can use it. You can download and interact with it however you'd like. So, really cool stuff. Writer can't debug UWP? Yeah. Why don't say more a Blazor? I'm not sure what you're asking there. Alexander, what about Blazor? Hey, Soviet Doge. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. My emotes from my channel over there on Twitch have a Halloween theme. Yes, my bot is dressed up as a skeleton for Halloween. Also, I'm not sure if I say it too much here on this stream. I say darn Skippy a lot instead of right. I try and avoid using any colorful metaphors, any swearing. So I'll say darn Skippy, which of course is a little bit of a reference to a peanut butter here in the States. We modified the icon that looks like the peanut butter jar, and it says more candy. So we did something with that. Always pay for DevExpress every year. You like DevExpress? Awesome, and you love their Blazor components. There's some really great Blazor components from the .NET component vendors, whether it's DevExpress, Component One. I think they're also Grape City. There you go. There's the more candy emotes. DevExpress, Grape City, Infragistics, Progress, Telerik, Sync Fusion. They all make really great components that are going to help you do your thing right there. Amenson, say if I made changes to .NET Runtime Socket API, would those PRs have any chance of being accepted? So that's a great question for anybody who's working in open source, and let's talk that through. For anybody who's working in open source, if you want to submit changes, if you want to submit suggestions for a fix, an improvement, like Amenson's suggesting here, what you do is most folks say, hey, please open an issue first. Let's discuss the type of change you're making, because we want to make sure that you're doing something that we all kind of agree with. Otherwise, they're not going to accept it. They're just going to straight deny and say, well, I don't know why you made this thing. We didn't ask for it. We don't understand why it's being submitted. And most importantly, when you submit something back to an open source project, whether it's .NET or any other project out there, the folks who are maintaining that project now need to maintain the code you wrote. So they want to make sure they understand it and understand why it's being created before they accept something being submitted. Let me see there. So a couple mentions from Stream Elements. Nitro Evil says, I noticed the ASP template for Web API has removed Startup CS and is merged to Program CS in .NET 6. That's correct. In .NET 6, in the, and I'll get to Lolo's comment there in a second. In .NET 6, you're going to see, if you're familiar with .NET 5 and the .NET Core project templates before that, you're going to find that startup sequences and the templates are much, much more simplified, so that there's one file needed to kick off an application, whether it's a Windows Forms application or a WPF application, an ASP.NET Core web application. You're going to find one file that kind of bootstraps and starts the application. This way, we get out of that shim of things that you need to do to set up your application and get right into the business process, the business logic for your application right away. And some of that boilerplate code that gets things running, it gets pushed out of the way, it gets done, and it is simplified as much as possible. Lolo has a question here. What I really miss is an on-error resume next. Well, that was very much a Visual Basic thing. Ignore all errors and proceed to the next line of code. Maybe with a block of, with errors, ignore. Yeah, I was a developer back in the day when we had that happening, and honestly, I like the try-catch block because it gives me a way to isolate exactly here. Only try, only interact with this block of code. So very easy for me to see, here's the only things that we're looking for an error in, that we're expecting to interact with. Rambling Geek says, C# is moving so fast. There's a new release of C# every year. Just like there's new releases of other programming languages on a frequent basis. So the fact that you have a dedicated C# development team building the language, investing, testing, getting feedback as they're evolving the language, I think that's a pretty cool thing. Zalmaz, when they first saw the changes in .NET 6 and how the code is templated, a little worried and confused, just so used to the older ones. Yeah, you know what? Zalmaz, I was the same way. Gosh, where did all the things go here? But the good thing to know is you can still write software using the older templated way. No reason for you to rewrite some of that code. It's okay. It works just fine. And if you want to build and work the previous way. Yum Num Rock says minimal APIs are interesting. Hopefully they get more code out for helping with unit testing before the release. We're about a month and a half, not even. We're about a month away. We are 1 month from .NET Conf, our big. How do I describe .NET Conf? Our big annual virtual conference. Our 11th year doing this, and our launch for .NET 6 is about a month away. It's a month from tomorrow that I'll be in studio. I'm gonna fly out to Seattle, and we're gonna have the big .NET Conf launch. It's gonna be a great event. We're really looking forward to it. Space Shot says, we all get used to the boilerplate template no matter the framework. Yes, we do. Sometimes we forget how the standard startup code can make it harder for others to join us in our favorite frameworks and platforms. Yes, that's something that was actually quite intimidating for new folks trying to get into C# and get into .NET. By simplifying things, we make it easier to get in and just start building an application. Start building and working with forms. Why do I have to learn what public static void main is? And this whole startup thing. Put it in one file and get folks into building and working with it as quickly as possible. You want to see what we're going to see in November? Or you feel it's huge? So with .NET being open source, everything's been kind of documented and out there. Folks see and know what's happening, what's coming with it. So we're in pretty good shape getting ready for that. All right. Let's see. Let's do this. I'm going to kick off a refresh on my chat app over there because it is not up to date. There we go. C# is moving slow. Okay. Just a few lines up, we had somebody say it's moving too fast. No higher-kinded types. What do you mean? No built-in aspect-oriented features. What programming languages do have aspect-oriented features? And those are things that the team has purposely left for the community to build. So, what do you mean by higher-kinded types? Because there's a point where the programming language stops, the frameworks pick up, and move on. Is there some massive project inside Microsoft that drives language features? Sometimes I get hardcore stuck, then suddenly there's a crazy new C# feature that solves the problem. So the C# team they're very focused, right? Their first party customers are folks like Bing, the search engine, folks that are building Azure, folks that are building and working on parts of Windows. So there's there's a bit to be said there about those are their first-party customers, not to mention the .NET framework. And when we want to do things like dramatically minimize the startup configuration for a .NET application, that requires some C# language features, right? Implicit usings, global usings. Those were things that needed to be defined and added to the programming language in order for them to become available for the templates and things. So very much the programming language is looking at, and the language designers look at what's happening in other languages, other metaphors, other programming styles and things that folks take advantage of and enjoy, and determine, do we need a similar feature in C#? They test it, they evaluate it, and they circulate samples for folks to interact with before they decide, okay, we're going to move forward and start adding this to the language. So, yeah, they've been trying to figure out how to broaden the abilities without fundamentally changing it. Yep, that's right. 3D Polywraith loves Xamarin, but it is a bit of a barrier to new developers, yes. So simplifying that, right? If we think about .NET MAUI, now with a much simpler startup experience, you're going to be able to jump in and start building .NET MAUI applications much, much faster. What's the Twitch link? On Twitch, we are Twitch TV. Today, we are Twitch TV Visual Studio. I'm Twitch TV CSharpFritz, if you want to see me. Was really cool seeing the speed improvements with Bing. Yes. Use the articles Microsoft published on the improvements to get time allocated to move production apps to .NET 5 from .NET Framework. Very cool, Yum Yum Rocks. You're going to see more about how the big performance improvements in .NET 5 and now .NET 6 improve and make Microsoft apps better. It's coming. There's lots more to be talked about there, because very much the .NET team is listening to other Microsoft applications and how those folks build and work with .NET. How focused is the .NET team on providing zero allocation framework features using things such as the new value test? Very focused, because driving down memory allocation makes things a lot faster. Do they make an effort in promoting such practices for third-party developers? Sure do. However, to be clear, .NET developers like to prematurely optimize things. Building things that you don't need first and think, well, because I optimized and I'm only using value types, it's going to be running much faster. If you still have bad practices elsewhere that are easier to pick up and detect than how you're juggling memory, that's going to be a much more significant issue for you to address. Any good sources, docs for building models with ASP? Somebody else might be able to help you with that, Nitro Evil. Building models, I'm not sure what you mean. It's always a little weird for me as ASP.NET dev and fan of the framework how huge swaths of the industry still don't know that it is truly cross-platform, says Carl Codes. Agreed. And that's why I am spending today and all month on stream programming with Ubuntu Linux, because there are a lot of folks out there who think that .NET Visual Studio are just a Windows thing. You can't do, gosh, I can't be serious on my Mac. I can't do this on my Linux box. No, you can't. And it's really good. .NET approach of doing everything out of the box annoys you, says Jens. Sometimes you spend more time researching what it can do for you. So here's the thing. Right, what Jens was saying, there's very much two groups that are diametrically opposite, that are debating this quite hotly. There's a group that says, I don't want you doing anything for me, I want to build it all myself. And there's another group that says, just like we saw in the comments earlier, why doesn't .NET include all of these things in the box? It needs to have all of these other features. Well, which one is it? Do you want the template that is pre-configured and has all the things? Or do you want the template that starts with nothing and you have to build it yourself? The answer is you can do both. You can do both. You're not forced to do either, but it's there for you if you want to use all the pre-configured things. You don't like Maui? You like Uno platform because you can use your favorite UWP API in WinUI? That's fine. It's up to you. We think Maui's going to be a tremendous platform for everybody to use. What do I think about the future of Blazor? Blazor is going to be around for a very long time. It's shipping as part of .NET 6. So you're going to get at least, as with all of our long-term support releases, you're going to get at least 4 more years of support on that for folks to be able to work with that. Why am I streaming under Science and Technology and why not and not under Software and Game Development? I don't know. Does anyone like nullable types? Yeah, it's all right. It helps folks avoid getting involved with dealing with nulls. Hoy asks, what do I think about .NET development on Apple Silicon? I think Apple pulled the trigger on their Silicon without getting anybody involved and ready to go to work with it. There's a lot of folks that work with third-party technologies that are really struggling with getting it working on Apple Silicon. You can do it. It's not as fast as Apple claims it could be, and we're working on that. But because Apple just launched it and didn't have any kind of folks being able to tune and interact and work with their engineers before the launch, we're struggling to catch up and get supported over there. So, good afternoon to you in Norway. Hi, Shono? Is that how you pronounce it? Nordic Lights? Build yourself as your go-to. It's up to you. You can do that. Simplified documents about Windows Forms. Go to .net and click Learn there. That's the best I can offer you. You want to learn mobile programming? Going to start with .NET Maui. Do you need to know Xamarin beforehand? Asks Hamed. No. Bartaz asking the question we get every stream. And I'm going to answer it the same way every stream. Why not Maui for Linux? Maui supports 4 different platforms: Windows, Mac, Android, iOS. And there is a community group that has started working on a Linux runtime for it. The team's already running behind trying to get those first 4 platforms done. The number of Linux users is orders of magnitude less than Windows, iOS, Android, and Mac OS. So it wasn't a priority for the first cut because they already knew they had a mammoth job to accomplish. But there is a community group working on a runtime for Maui. You're welcome to jump in there and help out. I would trust code used by millions more than something homegrown. I completely agree, Yum Yum Rocks. Are we going to see Microsoft cars too? We made Microsoft cars a couple years ago. Prototypes that were shown off at Build and Ignite. There was a truck. There was a Mustang. Was it a truck? No, it was a Jeep, I think. Really cool stuff, and they didn't go too much further with it. TMK DK says Apple is a locked system. Yes, it is. Hey, Frackberg, good to see you. Code with Sean, good to see you. Let me get into this. Let me head over. Let's start talking about our project today. We're about 40 minutes on. We've gone through and had a nice conversation here. And let's head over and get started with our notebooks and getting into the project today. Is there a design editor for Maui? I thought there was a designer that they were working on. I thought they were bringing the XAML designer in there, and you were able to use it. I don't work with Maui too much, but we would have to take a look. It would be in Visual Studio 2022 that you would find it, but I'm not sure. I would have to defer on that until I could take a look. But today we're going to be over on Ubuntu Linux. Hey James, hello. Let me head over to the other set and let's get started. Uh-oh. Am I on this headset? There we go. We're on the other headset. Let's see. Do I have all the things? Let me grab the coffee, grab the phone, and yeah, let's head over to the other set and talk about interfaces, abstract classes, and error handling. Ooh, I better move this up so I can see that up here. There we go. All right. See you in a minute over at the other set. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Heading over, doing the thing. And there it is, right there. Because this machine went to sleep on me, we'll log back in. There we go. There's our session information for today. Wow. Closures leak memory. Then we get the foo static user state. If foo accepts action, this can be syntactic candy. Sure, you could do that. Looks like it. They are implementing a previewer for Maui, yes. Let me bump up the font size on that real quick. Just use a smidge there. There we go. That's better. There we go. All right. When should I use try catch? I often have a lot of functions and all of them have exceptions. Well, you got a problem. You got a problem. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to get into functions in try catch error handling here in just a little bit. This is notebook 0108. You can see it right there. Interfaces and error handling. And we're going to talk about abstraction. We're going to talk about building abstract classes and interfaces and how we can work with them inside of our code. We're going to get back to try catch a little bit longer, a little bit further along here. So we've previously talked about the protected keyword. We've seen some interfaces in some other sessions. We talked about I Enumerable, the I Enumerable interface, but we haven't actually gotten into the science of object-oriented programming and how these pieces fit together, right? Where I Enumerable happens, how we use that, and how we can make more of our objects in C#. So how do we do that? What do we do with these things? So there's several things that we're going to talk about. We're going to get into. The first of them is abstract classes. It's way over there. There it is. Now, see, I really need to put that display over here so I can see what's going on. Everything in C# is an object, and you can derive one class from another. And this is the is-a relationship between two classes. So I can define an abstract class here called shape, right? I could say, well, we're going to define what a shape is. And right now, a shape doesn't have any properties. It's just an abstract class, and it has that abstract keyword right there, okay? So what that says is you can't create a shape class directly. You can't say new shape. That doesn't work. But you can say this class is a shape, like I have here with triangle, rectangle, and square. So I have class triangle, you see colon shape, right? Triangle is a shape. Rectangle is a shape. But I can also inherit from other classes that aren't necessarily abstract. So I can say class square is a rectangle. And this is this initial piece of inheritance that I want to talk about. These are inheriting features from the classes that they are defined to be related to, okay? So my square is a rectangle, and a rectangle is a shape. So this way, I also know then, transitively, that a square is a shape. Make sense? Very English way to describe that, but I think that relationship between these classes becomes clearer when you start thinking about using the is a text description. Let's see. Yes, what is the is a relationship, right? Yes, like a parent, right? So we define, right? We're defining that this class inherits from. It is a, right? It is one of these, right? A square is a rectangle. That's what I mean by the is a relationship, right? When you put together the sentence, it starts to make sense that way. Yes, there is a GitHub made available, and I shared it a little bit earlier. Is it going to give me the ability to post that message again? I had the GitHub up here somewhere. I don't have it handy. Can somebody share a link to the GitHub? So, yes, these are .NET Interactive notebooks. Multiple inheritance isn't a thing in C#. You can only inherit from one class. So we say, right, and that's where things here, right, allow us to inherit, right, from this entire stack, right? Square is a rectangle, is a shape. So we have this stack of inheritance, these ancestors of a square that are initially defined here. So these are .NET Interactive notebooks. They do work using Jupyter, the Jupyter Notebook technology. So yes, triangle is a shape, and we're going to see that relationship used a little bit later. Thank you. Thank you, Space Shot, for sharing the link. This isn't every day. I'm only on Mondays. I'm here live. You can find me Tuesdays and Thursdays on Twitch, talking about Blazor, talking about Azure over on those channels. So, Immenson with a very good question. Let me come to that in just a second. I want to say hello to Ivan. Good to see you. So, this is inheritance. We're inheriting the behaviors and properties of these other classes. When you build an object and you build the things that you're working with, right, you're inheriting features from this class to the classes above it. You can also build your classes, build your objects by composing features, by inserting into that class specific classes, objects that do those specific things that they need. So a very common example is something called the repository pattern, where you have a repository, some class that knows how to work with your data, some data store that it's working with. So we call it a repository. And that repository class will have create, read, update, and delete methods, and it knows how to go and work with a database or your file system or an API somewhere out there to work with. But that repository, to your other classes, knows how to do those things. You would compose a class that works with that by inserting that repository into the class to work with, instead of having some sort of a class that inherits and has a property, has those features, that knows how to go and interact with the repository. I'm a strong believer in composing your objects because it gives you a lot more flexibility to inject unit tests, inject fakes for unit tests later. And we'll see that in a unit testing session a couple weeks down the line here. So we'll talk more about composing in just a little bit. Where do I get my caps? Well, this one I got, this is the GitHub hat I'm wearing today. I got from the GitHub swag shop. I don't think they make this hat anymore. I think they sold out of all of them. Richard, how you doing there, friend? Alrighty. Is there any abstract class? Are there any abstract classes in Clip Talk? Oh yes, very many. If you watch the stream that I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I've been building a website with Blazor and Azure Functions called Clip Talk. That website is built with Blazor that runs in the browser, and there are many abstract classes running around there. particularly around how I work with data repositories. I have base repository objects that know how to interact with, that know how to work with whatever database system that I'm using, and I inherit from that and shape that repository appropriately for the various entities that I need to work with. So, in the case of ClipTalk, I work with video clips. So I have a repository object that knows how to interact with video clips. Consequently, then, when I write that class to work with video clips, I'm able to point back to all the features of that database that are in the parent class to work with. We'll see how you can do that kind of thing here in just a minute. Is controller a repository pattern class? No, it is not, Jens. No, controller is different. Would it be bad to do data access within an abstraction class service layer rather than a repository? Different concept, Evan. I probably went a little bit further there. Dependency injection needs abstract classes? No, dependency injection can also work with interfaces. And we'll see that in a minute here. Let me continue down here. I went a little bit further ahead to answer a question, and I brought up that repository example. Let me show you a little bit more here, and it might clear things up a bit. So we've defined this class as abstract using the abstract keyword here. All right. So I will yes, .NET Interactive. There it goes. Execute it, and there's nothing to report because it doesn't actually do anything yet. But we can add methods, we can add properties to our abstract class like this, just like we would have inside of any other class. We've defined that our class shape has a perimeter, and we'll just by default return 10 here. And we're also going to define a method called area, and we'll return 15. I don't know what it is yet. We'll just make it really simple, and we're going to force those values in there so that we have these methods that we can interact with. So I still have my triangle, my rectangle, and square still defined the same way, but now I can execute the perimeter and area methods on triangle, rectangle, and square. If I execute that and I say, give me a new triangle and ask for its area, well, I get 15. Well, I don't really know if that's the area of the triangle, but I can also, right, do this for a rectangle, 15, right? And if we want to do that for a square, 15, right? And they also have, right, the perimeter method, right? There it is, perimeter, and 10, okay? So it knows how to do that interaction. It knows that all of those objects have these methods, but it's probably not what we want, something hard-coded on there. We should probably have those and interact with whatever that class type is and pass some information back and forth so that we know a shape has perimeter and area, and we actually want to do some calculations that are specific to each one of those, right? We know a triangle's area is a half base times the height of the triangle, right? And a square's area is the side squared, right? And a rectangle, and so on and so forth. So we should take those into account as we build our objects so that we're sure that shapes have those methods and apply the appropriate formulas for those shapes in each class. We'll see that in a second. Let me take a look over here at chat. Catching up here, Mez Yusuf asks, what's my laptop brand? This is a Kubuntu Focus. This is a K Focus. This is not an M2, but they've released a couple new versions of their laptop. But this one, this is shipped with an i7 10000 series. 64 gig of RAM. It has an NVIDIA. This one has a 2800 NVIDIA 2800 card in it. You can see the NVIDIA logo right there. Beautiful display for me. So I really enjoy using this. Big thanks to the folks at Kubuntu Focus for letting me use their laptop here on stream for Ubuntober. No, it's not a framework laptop. Nope. Nope, nope. Abstract class indicates it's a class you never intend to make an instance of. I'm not sure the intent is there, but it's definitely a constraint. You can't make an instance of an abstract class. Ivan says I should come to Serbia. When we get on the other side of pandemic and I'm eligible to travel to Europe, maybe we can talk about it then. Yes, base implementations in abstract classes. That's right. Effectively creating blueprints, Russell. Yes, we're going to get there in just a second. Sheepy says, so square, triangle, and rectangle all inherit from shape. Yes, and those are the classes that I create, but the shape class itself, you can never directly create. That's correct. So if I were to change this and say, well, give me a new shape, you cannot create an instance of the abstract type. You can see it, or interface shape, okay? Can't do that, but you can certainly make a square. Shape is just defining that, hey, there's this thing out here, this general concept of shape. And, right, I like the term that was mentioned earlier. It creates those blueprints that these other things know how to implement and we can work with. So, yes, I'm using my Raspberry Pi mouse. I do have a Raspberry Pi, the keyboard. We could do a Raspberry Pi episode here, I guess. But I do have all of that. That might be fun to do next time. Do everything on a Raspberry Pi. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to make sure that we talk about that next time. Difference between interface and abstract class. Spoiler alert! It's a little bit further down in the notebook here. Why do Blazor WASM downloads around 9 meg each time? That's not very production ready. When in development mode, it does. When you publish, it tree shakes, and we've gotten that down under 2 meg. If you want to take a look at a Blazor WebAssembly site that has a much smaller footprint, check out hats.csharpfritz.com. In fact, I'll even bring that one up real quick here. And I'll do it with Firefox, hats, CSharpFritz.com. This is a Blazor website that I wrote to show off my hat collection. And there it is. There's all my hats. You can take a look and tinker around here if you want to look at a very simple Blazor website that shows off all the goofy hats that I have and that I wear live on video. And the source code is available as well. This is an Azure static website. And it delivers a much smaller footprint than 9 meg of data. So, all right, back over here. 2 meg is still a lot. 2 meg is actually smaller than many websites, including the website you're watching this on. Whether it's YouTube or Twitch, the amount of code that they deliver into your browser is a lot bigger than 2 meg. So, all right. So, right, here I go, saying parameter and area are calculated a little bit differently. So if we want to define and say, these methods are available, and you must implement it in the classes that inherit from it, we can mark that method as abstract. Okay? So right there you see public, abstract, perimeter, abstract, decimal, area. So we're defining these are methods that are available in all shape classes. And since they're defined that way, they must also be defined inside of triangle, rectangle, and square. Okay? So if we take a look at triangle, perimeter is side 1, side 2, side 3. Area, I put together, and I'm using Heron's formula here, is a half times the perimeter, and we take the square root of the semi-perimeter and subtract the product of each of the differences of the lengths. And that's how we get the area every time, right? We could do the base times the height, all that stuff, but you have the sides as properties here, and it makes it real easy then to derive the area. When we have a rectangle, we have a length and width, and the perimeter is length times 2, width times 2, area, length times width, and a square is just a type of rectangle, right? So now I can do these same things here. I can define a triangle with its 3 sides lengths, a 3, 4, 5. That's a right triangle. And I can ask for and say display the area and display the perimeter. Let's do this. Let's clear all the outputs. Run that again. So, right, if it's a 3, 4, 5, the perimeter is 12 and the area is 6. So, base times height 3 times 4 is 12. Half of that is 6 because it's a right triangle. Real easy to figure that out. So, my triangle has the same area and perimeter methods, right? I can do the same thing with a rectangle, right? I could say var rect equals new rectangle, right? And I can say, sure, let's say length equals 3, width equals 4. Thank you, GitHub Copilot. And I can say rect area, sure, and it gives me the rectangle's area is 12, right? So 3 times 4 is 12. I can also ask for the perimeter because I know it's a shape, and those have those methods, and I get the perimeter 14, right? 3 plus 4 is 7, doubled 14. There we go. So, right, we've defined that a shape always has these methods, and we're able to always call them even in those classes that inherit from shape. We've provided the appropriate implementation, the formulas for those shapes in those specific classes so that they adhere and have those same capabilities as all shapes. Let me take a look at chat and get caught up here. Make sure that we're all in good shape. I didn't mean that. What about a constructor in abstract classes? We can do that also. Didn't know I run the Visual Studio channel? Oh yeah, absolutely. We can talk about, I think I get into constructor here in just a little bit. I'll have to scroll down, but if I don't, we'll touch base on that. Is there a way to inherit from multiple classes, asks Mighty Sill. No. C# only has a single class inheritance. You cannot inherit from this class and that class and that class. One class at a time. So how is ClipTalk going? It's going very well. I was migrating. I had 1 million clips I had to migrate to our new database last night, and it took the better part of an hour to do that migration, and then another hour for all the indexes to catch up. Got a little bit more work that I'm going to push through later today of just letting things migrate, letting it sit, and the indexes adjust, and we'll see how it's running. I should be able to turn that on tonight. How to serialize, deserialize with JSON. That's a bit off topic. Look at system text JSON Serializer. There are a couple of methods on the Json Serializer class in the system text JSON namespace that you can work with that will do that very, very quickly, very memory efficient in .NET Core 3.1, .NET 5, .NET 6. Hello to you, Koloho Barayan in Kenya. Good to see you. Hey, Bananas, good going. Yes, we are in good shape. Is ClipTalk now on RavenDB? Almost. I didn't turn it on only because I wanted the indexes to shake out last night. But there is now 5.5 million clips running on the staging servers for ClipTalk. Multiple interfaces different from inheriting from multiple classes. Kyung, awesome question. Kyung, I love that question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. What's the difference between shape of T equals new triangle versus triangle of T is new triangle? Kyung noticed that I used the var keyword here. Great catch. Thank you so much. Look at that. Check out the big brain on Kyung. Awesome stuff. Check this out. So I'm using the var keyword here to say C#, when you compile this, in fact, go figure out whatever the type is here on the right side. In this case, triangle. Make that variable. Make T one of those. You can do that. However, what some folks like to do is, and there's nothing wrong with this, is they like to be very explicit in what type that they're declaring their variables for. So as pointed out by Kyung, I can say triangle. I can force this to say this is a triangle. There is no performance difference in your running code whether you say var or triangle, okay? That is only a thing that happens at compile time where it just goes and figures out the var. It might take like a couple milliseconds to go figure out and set that type appropriately for you. So, the question is, I said triangle of t, but we know that triangle is also a shape. What happens if we say shape there? What happens if we say Fritz needs to get the capitalization correct there on his shape class? You can do this also, and it still works. But if I, let's comment out this block down here, just because I don't, if I say display t, right, it knows that this is a triangle, and it's displaying there's the three sides, right? Those are the three properties of it. However, if I say get type of t, it says it's a triangle. However, if, nuts. I scrolled and I didn't mean to. However, if I go to work with this, it doesn't have those sides available to me. If I say display t side 1 length, error, shape doesn't contain that property. What this has done is I've pushed it into a less specific type, a shape, not a triangle, and I'm able to work with only those things that are specific to a shape in my code. Now, I can force it back to a triangle because it is a triangle, right? So I can say, if I put in parentheses here, I can cast it back into that other type by saying, helps if I get that triangle, yeah. T, let's put some more parentheses around this so we get this right. Right? I'm a big fan of using more parentheses. And now I can say side 1 length. And I'm missing a, right? That one. Oh, I've got too many. There we go. Now I can find it because I've cast it. Now I can change the type of something by using parentheses here to change the type of that variable and start interacting with it. So because it was defined as a shape, but it is actually a triangle that's stored in there, it's still a triangle stored in memory, but for the purposes of working with the rest of the code, I'm only allowed to interact with the shape properties, methods, and events. I'm able to cast it back. We'll start thinking of this as a triangle by putting triangle in parentheses here to cast, to change its type and work with it. Really good question there. Thank you for the question, Kyung. Really appreciate you bringing that up. That you can do both. And it might be okay to do both because you may want to be able to generically refer to whatever this object is. Maybe it's a property on a class, and you may pass in a triangle, you may pass in a square, and interact with it differently. Well, interact with it the same way inside of your class, even though it behaves differently inside of the triangle and square classes. Let me head back up here, take a look at chat. You can't do that in Golang. You know what? I'm not familiar with Go. I'm sorry. Somebody asked, can I do C++? No, I'm sorry. You're talking to a guy named CSharpFritz. I don't teach C++ here, I'm sorry. can't access triangle properties if you declare it as a shape without casting. That's right. In a large code base, is it quicker and better to use explicit typecasting? No. No. Makes no difference. If you override them for every shape, it can't change side lengths. Right. In the I think that's right. I'm a little confused. What's the difference between is and casting? So we can also, because we know that T, right, we can display, right, run that. I can say display T, and there's a keyword here called is that you can use. And I could say, well, display T is triangle, and it does a test. Is this object, can it be cast to that type? So T is triangle, true. T is shape, true. T is rectangle, false. T is not a rectangle. T is a triangle that is also a shape. So, and look, I'm even getting the yellow underscore here and say, it's not right. Visual Studio Code is helping me out there. Thank you so much, Visual Studio Code. So that's the is keyword. There is also the as keyword. So I could say display T as shape, and it gives me that. It'll cast also into that type. Now, if it can't cast into that type, it'll return an error. Can't do that. Okay? So, things to be aware of when you try and convert types. So, good questions there. Thank you so much. How is the Linux support for .NET Core? Phenomenal. It is phenomenal. It's extremely fast. Runs great on Docker as well. Why did I use override? Asks Arshia. Why did I use the override keywords? Good question. I skipped right over that. So let's talk about that. Here I defined the abstract methods for perimeter and area inside of a shape. In order to provide the implementation, right, the specific implementation for those methods, I need to redefine those methods in the child classes. So here in triangle, I've defined perimeter, and in order for me to tell the C# compiler that, hey, this is the perimeter for the shape class, I use this keyword here, override. Okay? So by specifying override with the exact same signature, the exact same return type, and input parameters as the abstract definition here, right? See, they've got the exact same signature, except this one has the abstract keyword, this one has the override keyword. This is kind of that pointer that says, I'm implementing and defining this one for the triangle class. And that's why you use the override keyword. And I'm realizing I'm saying override in a very stadium announcer way. 3D Polyreth says var is great, but please do not overuse it. Yeah, where the result type is obvious is really where you should use it. What if you cast T as dynamic? Sure, let's do that real quick. So dynamic is another keyword that you can use inside of C#. So if we say T as dynamic, it's actually going to give you the exact same thing, right? I still have the method calls there, but it gives you the exact same thing. If you cast something to dynamic, you're then doing reflection to go figure out all the methods and properties that you're interacting with. Makes it a little bit slower to interact with, but it makes it a heck of a lot more flexible to call and interact with things. But for that flexibility, you're giving up some performance. Why do I want an abstract class if you're overriding it anyway in other classes? Because if I need to have some sort of an object that interacts with shapes, I'm going to want to be able to call those methods regardless of how they're implemented and what the implementation underneath of them are. I don't care about the implementation underneath. I care that I'm calling a shape. Something else outside of my class is defining and directing and saying, well, you shape sorter class, I'm going to give you a triangle to work with. Go ahead and do whatever you want to do with that, but I'm giving you a triangle as the shape that you're working with. I can show you a little bit about that with some of the repository code that I've written for Clip Talk in a little bit if we want to dig into that. But I want to make sure we cover all of our content here because I've got about 45 minutes left to go here before they kick me out. All right. Let's move on here. So you can declare variables or parameters in the base type and pass in or assign the derived type. So this gives our classes more flexibility. So if I define a method is quadrilateral right here, exactly to those questions that we had, right? I want to be able to pass in a shape and do some sort of a test on it. So not only do I have, right, I flip these back to just their simple implementations, but if I want to be able to test, inspect shapes and say, well, do something with this, I can say, well, is this a quadrilateral? And there's that is keyword. Return is a rectangle, because a square is also a rectangle. So I can test and say, well, is that shape a rectangle? And there, rectangle is quadrilateral, true. Triangle is quadrilateral. Quadrilateral, of course, a four-sided shape. Triangle is not. It's a three-sided shape, so it's false. So these are ways for us to define interactions that we do some sort of work with this generic object. Okay. Clock is ticking. Yes. What is the use of C#? I'll quickly answer that. C# is used everywhere, from IoT devices, mobile devices, your favorite mobile phone, tablet, desktop, laptop, workstation, Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. Works in all the clouds, works on Docker containers and Kubernetes, works all the places that you could write code, you can build games with it. And I'm sure there's a number of games out there that you've played that are all built with Unity and C# as the game framework that many folks use. C# is used everywhere, and it's part of the fastest web framework available. Check it out at techempower.com for more information about that. Raspberry Pi, yeah, we have our Raspberry Pi tower that I have some C# running on here. Let me grab that real quick. I don't have it plugged in right now, but there you go. There's my Raspberry Pi tower that all runs C#. I've got 6 Pis in there. So, and it's waiting to be spun up with Kubernetes to run all kinds of awesome .NET code for me. Is it okay to use abstract classes and interfaces, covariance, return types over generics? Roberto. If generics have a very complex and nested dependency, yeah, you're going to get into some confusion there. I try to avoid covariance and contravariance concerns with my generics. I really do. You can do that. It's possible, but it's easy to get confused. So, yep, we're going to get into virtual in a little bit here. The Thanos voice mod. We'll get there. How you doing, Broken Sword? You're very welcome. I'm streaming today. Can we use static with abstract class and method? Yes, you can, Ajay. Yes. You don't like languages with garbage collectors? C++ has a garbage collector now. Get back to me. Is Unity full C# now, or is it still mono? Unity is leveling up and getting more of .NET Core's feature. Yeah, that's my tower of pies. Yep. Does 6 pi zeros equal 0? Nice. I like what you did there, Chris. Reading the book, Broken Sword is reading clean code mentioned to try and keep try and catches near the surface layer. Yes, we're going to show that in just a little bit. Most languages do now have a GC. Thank you, Soviet Doge, for the Fritz Pogs. Let's talk about virtual methods here. We're about halfway through. So virtual methods are a way for you to define a default implementation of something. So maybe we define a default implementation of area that takes length and width and multiplies them. So I've got length width here. So when I implement a triangle, well, triangle doesn't have length and width. It's different. So instead, I have my abstract perimeter. There it is, perimeter. And I have my area here. Well, I'm going to redefine area and say this is how you should actually use area. Override and take this implementation. Because I have that default implementation up here, I don't have to define it for rectangle. And I don't have to define anything then for square, because this already has length and width. And when we execute, creating a new triangle, that works. But what's weird about that is if I say display my triangle also has length and width. That's weird. So these are things that you can tinker with and decide if you provide a virtual definition for a method. It can be overridden, but here's a default implementation. Okay. We also have the ability to do sealed classes. And a sealed class says no other class can inherit from this. So I'm going to define shape with perimeter and area, length and width, and I'll have a rectangle that has a perimeter, that has an area defined. And I have a square. Well, square, instead of saying, well, just take the area that's there, I'm just going to say, well, length times length. But, right, and if I execute that, right, if I say here's a new square with length and width of 4, I get 16. Of course, that makes sense. But if I make my rectangle here, if I mark this as sealed, well, look at that. I'm already getting a red line. I'm already getting a red line right there. Look at that, right? Square cannot derive from the sealed type rectangle. And you might do this if you have some sort of a class that you don't want other classes to inherit from. So I get all these areas. Look at this. Look at this mess. Because I'm not allowed to work with that. It's sealed. Okay? So get rid of the sealed keyword and it works. All right? So that's where I wanted to go with abstract classes, virtual methods today for us to be able to interact with those. No, that's not the Uncle Bob book. Clean Code? No. Clean Code is written by somebody else. I forget who wrote it. Yeah, my copy's over there on that shelf. Everybody should have a copy of Clean Code. Phenomenal book. The white font is so jarring. What white font? Hey, good morning, Jeff Game Dev. Hello, hello. Why am I screaming at... Why is the compiler screaming at us? What about static abstract class shape? Does it work? No. Because if you put a static indicator up here on the class, it's not a static... It's... Right, abstract types cannot be static because you're telling it inherit from these things. Static classes contain methods, contain properties, constants, enumerables that can be used, enums that can be used in other things. They're not intended to be re-implemented or created. Where an abstract class is something that you are defining, should be created, and be inherited from. So, all right, moving on. Oh, you want to create, okay, yeah, so I went through that, and now that works. So interfaces. So we had some questions about this earlier about, well, interfaces are different. So an interface is a contract. It defines behaviors that a class or a struct must implement. There is no right? Like the virtual, well, I don't want to, there's a default implementation here. An interface says you must implement these properties, events, methods, indexers. So we saw the I Enumerable interface used previously to define an object that you could iterate over, and you could take a look at each one of the entries in it. So many C# developers, by convention, name their interfaces starting with a capital letter I. So you might have an interface that defines how you log messages, and by convention, we'll call it iLogger. And I'll define one method in here, log error. It returns void, and it has some error message that we're going to log. And I'm going to also have a property here called error count. Now, error count for those objects that interact with an iLogger can only get the error count. You can't set the number of errors on the logger, right? We can just say, well, how many errors were there? All right. The management of the error count is going to take place inside of our logger. So let me show you just a simple logger that I defined here for us to interact with, and then I'll come back to chat. So I can define a display logger here that'll output things to the notebook display if we tell it to log an error. So I implement the interface, and I specify that this class implements the interface using the same signature that we had earlier for implementing an abstract class, right? We have colon and the name of the interface, iLogger, after the name of the class. So in order for us to define and have those methods appropriately, right, so that it behaves as an iLogger, I have my log error method here, and I have my error count defined as well. Now, I put a static error count variable here, right, this field, so that across all of the instances of display logger, I'm counting, here's the number of errors that I've interacted with. And when you call log error, I'm just going to say display this nice message and increment the error count. I might have another type of logger that's a database logger, and I might call it DB logger. So I still need to implement those two, that method and that property. So log error, and we'll make some sort of connection out to the database and actually write that. And for the purposes of showing the difference here, I just wrote display error log to database, right? The actual code to go right to the database is not part of what we're focusing on here. It's the database logger, and it's going to do something, but I don't need to implement it to get my point across in this demo. And I'll have an error count, and this might query the database to go get that count of errors. And for right now, I'm just going to return 0. So I would then write some sort of a method display error count that receives the logger that we're currently working with. And we're going to return, look at that, logger error count. It doesn't care whether it's database logger or it's the display logger. All that it cares about is that it's looking at an iLogger, and it's going to return that error count. So maybe I create the database logger, and I say, you know what, let's log an error. Houston, we have a problem. Go display that error count. So if I run that, it says error log to database, and the error count is 0. If I change this to the display logger, right, it also implements, notice, none of my other code changes, okay? I'm still calling logger log error because it's an iLogger, right? I can even change this to iLogger, okay? And I can pass that into that display error count, and now I get the display logger saying, Houston, we have a problem, 1. There's 1 error. Run that again. It still says 1 because I'm creating a new, right? I'm redefining and re-executing this each time, okay? So, different ways for us to implement the same methods, and we can put those interfaces, we could put multiple interfaces on the same classes, on one class, so that it knows, well, you need to implement and be a logger, and you also need to be able to do this. You also need to be able to do that. Okay? And that's how we manage and we interact with interfaces. Why two mice? Well, this one controls this mouse that you see right here on this machine. This mouse controls my my prompter that I have that's my production machine, so I can scroll through and read chat messages. Thank you so much, Broken Sword. I'm glad your team, your group of streamers there enjoyed that. Have a great one. More about the clean code book. Look for it on Amazon. It is by Uncle Bob. Okay. Refactoring by Martin Fowler. No. No, it might be. There might be another book that I'm thinking of. Then it's not Martin Fowler's book. No, I'm thinking of the Gang of Four book. Is what I'm thinking. How can we use static methods in a derived class? So, let me go back up here to the shapes, right? So if we can create a static method in here, something like this. Yep. So now down here, right? I can also say display s dot. I can't actually say s dot say hello, right? Because that's on the shape object. You can't call it on the instance. You have to call it on the base type. But it's there, it's available for you, right? Right, I can call it from inside here if I'd like. Right, I can do that. And it's available to you because it is a static method that is available. You can do that. Right, having that out there doesn't change too much of the behavior, but you can't, from a static method, you can't interact with instance properties and methods. It's in its own world off to the side. Okay? Databases 101. That's a whole nother topic. Yes, interface is like a contract. That's right. Let me see. I see abstract class cannot create an instance. Correct. So I think we don't need to use public modifier for properties and functions. You do. Because, right, if we don't provide that public modifier, it defaults to private. And you can see it's giving me a red underline here because they cannot be private. You can mark them as protected. That says that it must be implemented, and the only classes that are allowed to execute that perimeter method are down here, the inheriting classes, right? Rectangle can execute that, but you do need to specify public. You can also specify internal. That'll work also, but public is probably where you need to be. All right, so the brief interface bits. Let me take a quick look here. Does using interfaces only inside of a library make any sense? Are there any benefits? No, not too many benefits. You probably want to publish your interface definition in one library and a series of implementations of that interface somewhere else. So, and to be clear, introducing an interface and multiple implementations of that interface does introduce a little bit more processing when you're on a smaller device, like a tablet or a mobile phone or or an IoT device, that's an extra layer of processing and implementation to go through that you should probably avoid. So, is there a way that both Twitch and YouTube chats can be visible in chat? Yes, and that's what I do over on the other scene, but this is what I want to show, and I tried to do something like featured chat to show a highlight here, but I can't get it to work. One real-world example of an interface, says Surly Dev, is the power socket on the wall. Power companies all provided an agreed-to interface. It's delivering this much current over that socket, and there's an agreed standard as to the shape of that in your part of the world. Here in the States, we have 2 prongs with a third circular prong. We have 2 vertical rectangular prongs with a third circular prong on the bottom, but in different parts of the world, they're different shapes. Ours are typically square or square with a rounded bottom. Looks like a little bit like a V. Of course, right? You've got all different shapes in different parts of the world and different current delivered across it as agreed to by the electric companies in your country. So, yeah, that's an interface, and we've all got different outlets, different plugs that we use to connect to those with whatever device it might be. All right. Wouldn't JIT usually remove the virtual method call overhead? No. Just-in-time compilation still has to fire. You'll actually do ahead-of-time compilation for an IoT device or a mobile device. You're still going to cross a little bit of extra processing instruction that you don't need. Yeah, every October I use Ubuntu Linux all month long. So you can also provide explicit implementations of an interface. This is something that is a little bit tricky. I try to avoid doing this because it makes it a little bit easier to see exactly what I'm working with. But these are things that you can do. So if I define an interface called I do a thing, and it's got a method, do the thing. It's a public interface, so do the thing is typically going to be a public method. I can explicitly implement that interface here by defining public void do the thing with some sort of thing. Now, I can also hide it, so it's not a publicly accessible method, by explicitly implementing it. So here's secret thing. It's a secret, and it implements I do a thing, but notice the signature here. It's not a public void, it's a private void. I do the thing dot do the thing. So it's saying this interface, this method is available only when I'm behaving as I do a thing. It's not available otherwise. So if it's going to be behaving as an interface, as the I do a thing interface, then we can execute this. So let's take a look here. If I say new public thing, I did the thing, right? That's the public void method there. But if I change this to secret thing and implement, secret thing doesn't contain that. But if I specify that this is the I do a thing interface, now it does know how to do that. So the object kind of hides that it's implemented this interface. And I know how to do these things, but I'm not going to be loud about it and say, hey, look, here's all the things that you can do. It's hiding it. And it's only available when we cast it into that interface type. All right, so that may be important for how you design your application. It's an option you're allowed to do. Hey, Greg, what are the implementations of I Enumerable? You can find it. I think the question is, what are the properties and methods of it? You can find those implemented on list and array and dictionary. I'm not going to go through that right now. You can take a look at the documentation on docs.microsoft.com, and it'll show you all the things you need there. Yes, you can provide an abstract class with an interface. Yes. So, yeah. All right. Now, something that was added in a recent version of C#, I think it was one of the C# 7s. I forget if it was 7.1 or 7.2. But you can now provide a default implementation of an interface. So, this is a way for you to provide, right, some definition as to how something should behave. Now, this is going to look a little weird. I can provide an interface that implements another interface. This is a way you might create a new version of that interface, right? So I've created I do a thing too, and it implements all of the things from I do a thing. So I'm going to add the method here, do something else. But it also, I'm going to provide a default implementation of I do a thing here, and it has a syntax that looks like that explicit implementation. So, right, void I do a thing dot do the thing. This is my default thing. So now, when I implement this interface, I can say, well, here's a new thing, and I don't have to implement do the thing. I can say, here's just do something else, and it knows how to do that. So now, when I say, all right, let's try to do something else, it does something else. If I want to also tell it, well, go do that original thing, doesn't know how to do that because it was explicitly implemented. I need to, just like we saw previously, I need to turn this into, if I turn this into I do a thing too. Now it knows how to do it because I didn't provide an implementation inside of this class. I was working with just the new thing object, okay? Now that it knows that, oh, you're working with this interface, I have that explicit implementation that I can then go work with. Okay? So, interesting way to version things, provide that default implementation, and I can, of course, right? I can provide do the thing, display, I did the thing. Okay? Now, why doesn't it like this? I've got an extra curly brace there. There we go. So now when I run it, now I get I did the thing instead of this is my default. So I provided a default implementation of it, and I can override and still provide additional features. And I'm doing this through interfaces. So to the folks a little bit earlier who were asking about multiple inheritance, this is a way to kind of get around that language limitation and provide some default implementations of things through interfaces, which then can be implemented, multiple interfaces implemented on the same class. Is Linux a friendly environment to code and host C#? Yes. Very much so. It's one of the. It's actually faster to run C# applications, web applications, on Linux than it is on Windows. And the data's on the Tech Empower website when that third party reviewed and tested the .NET Core frameworks. You hate all of this. What are the real world uses? Fraggle Rock. I'm sorry to hear that. Dependency injection is a big example of that. You're going to see that in, I think, 2 weeks here on stream. And we'll show more of that. I can actually show a little bit of the ClipTalk source code, how I do abstract classes and interfaces. I'll show that in just a little bit here after I get through it. No, you know what? I'll open it up in just a second. Is the interface inheriting or implementing that other interface in this case? Implementing. Who? Who what? That's right. You don't need to use all the features. That's right, Quigley. You are absolutely right. Here, let's open another Visual Studio Code. Let's do this, just to kind of show you a little bit more real-world example, because I have it right here. I'm going to open another Visual Studio Code. This is the website that I've been working on my other stream called ClipTalk. And ClipTalk is a pretty complex application here that builds and serves information about video clips from the Twitch platform. So what I've done is I've defined things like, where is it? Like a clip repository interface. Okay? So I have this interface that says, here's how we work with clips. I know how to add or update clips. I know how to add a bunch of clips, a range of clips, delete clips, different ways to get clips. I've even got way down here ways to update clips, and you can see it over here. I've got ways to search for clips. Fantastic. It knows how to implement and work with these things, and I don't pass implementations of the interface directly into my methods, because I've also got things like a base repository class, like this one, for working with the MySQL database. And by default, it has implementations here for, there we go, for get all. Go get all of this type from the database, and it knows how to do that. Add or update this type, a default definition of it. You see I'm using the virtual keyword there to say this is the default way to add or update items in the database. The default way, right, with the virtual keyword to add a collection of clips or whatever object is implementing to the database, right? Get by row key, get all. You see these defined that are implemented by the interface, but I add a couple more things on when I implement the full object, like over here. I have, here's my Twitch clip repository that knows how to interact with MySQL, and it implements my clip repository interface. So when I ask for a clip repository, it's going to get this implementation, and it knows how to interact and use MySQL because it is a MySQL repository. So it knows how to, right? I have an overridden implementation of add or update here that I'm interacting with. And I reach in and call the rest of the base implementation, the default implementation, by calling base add or update. And it calls into that class I inherited from and says, execute that add or update method. And I've got other methods here that are implemented. Get clips for this channel. And it knows how to interact with the MySQL database and then do that execution. So right here's a little bit more real-world example of how I'm interacting with this. Consequently, in my Azure functions, right? So I'm up here in my Azure functions, and if I go to here, get clips I like, right? I have there, I'm referencing my clip repository, and I'm saying get clips liked by my Twitch ID. And format them appropriately with a little bit of link statement here. So this, if I mouse over a clip repository, you can see is an I clip repository. It doesn't know that it's a MySQL repository. It doesn't know that it's a different type of database repository. It just knows that that class knows how to get clips liked by this person. Fantastic. I don't have to think about it. I've encapsulated all that logic in another class where it can be managed appropriately. All right, let me head back over here and let's get into error handling. All right, we can talk more about ClipTalk tomorrow over on my stream, Twitch TV/CSharpFritz. Unix is faster to upload data in MySQL over Windows by a sizable amount. I can't rule one way, comment one way or the other on that, John, on YouTube. Yes, interface is just signatures. I do stream. I am streaming currently on Twitch as well, Shubhem. I actually stream to 3 locations for this stream. Twitch TV/Visual Studio, YouTube.com/.net, and we're also on Learn TV, aka.ms/Learn TV. You can find me over there as well. Did I use a serverless layer? Yes, I did for Clip Talk. Am I doing this method default hiding stuff anywhere? No, I am not. How relevant is a factory pattern in today's world of .NET 6? I'm not using it anywhere. But there are folks who use the abstract factory pattern. Sure, how relevant is it? Hard to say. RESTful methodology for this API over in ClipTalk? Yes, entirely. Did I use serverless layer? There is no controller. It's a class that has those objects injected into it. What shade are my glasses? These are Gunner Lightning 360s that I'm wearing. Where's Mixer? Mixer was discontinued more than a year ago by the Xbox team. Okay. Error handling and exceptions. There were folks asking about error handling and how do we deal with this. When you do something that you shouldn't, right? So I have a divide method here. If I try and divide by 0, you get an exception. And that's ugly. Nobody likes that. What do we do with that? We can handle those exceptions. We can do something with that by wrapping our statements in a try-catch block. Many other languages have try-catch blocks. And there were folks who were commenting earlier, and they're right. You want to wrap as little code as possible in a try-catch block. You don't have to wrap everything in a try-catch block. You should be writing defensive enough code that you don't need to write a try-catch block. Typically, you're going to put a try-catch block under something that's working with external input, right? Something that a user submitted, something that was fetched from an external API or database or something. And you want to check that because, right, code that exists and interoperates inside of your application, you should be already defensively coding against, doing appropriate checks to make sure that you don't do anything out of bounds. But when it comes to working with things that are trusting external input, we should wrap that code in a try-catch. And when you start wrapping things in try-catch, you're adding onto the stack of processes that .NET is managing in memory. And if you have more and more of those, it becomes a real burden on the processor to unwind and interact with those as errors happen, and it figures out what to do with things. So you want to keep this as shallow as possible. Only write try-catches around things where something could really happen. Otherwise, practice some defensive coding. Write an if statement around something or a switch case so that you properly test before you start processing and working with input. Okay? So in this case, try-catch, we're going to, instead of just trusting that we can divide those, we're going to instead say, well, try doing the delete. And we're going to handle a divide by 0 exception, and if there was something else, if something else happened, we can catch and say, well, this is the catch-all that we're going to go and display some other message. So we're going to display that if we try and divide by 0 and return 0. So if we just say divide, it works. If we try to divide by 0, it errors out. If we try to divide by null, you broke something else. So, because you can't divide by null, it doesn't know what to do with that. So that catch-all, this catch statement without an explicitly defined exception type, catches that and we can interact with it. Now, by defining the exception type here in these parentheses, I can actually inspect that exception and do something else with it if I'd like. All right? And that's up to you, what you want to do with it. But what's important also is that you clean up. Now, I hope in this very contrived example you see here that instead of catching when it divides by 0 or when a null is passed in, you could put an if statement in there to behave appropriately. and raise an error, or we call throw an exception, that says, hey, you did something you're not supposed to do. And that will actually perform better than adding more try-catch blocks here. So if I want to clean up any extra things that are going on, I can use a finally clause, and this finally block here will clean up and take care of anything that you might also want to ensure happens before the exception is passed on or something else occurs. Finally always executes. Always executes. So if I say divide 4 by 2, I still get it saying cleaning up code, even though it didn't catch this error. That finally executed. And if I change that to a 0, right, you broke something else, cleaning up code here, and you see how it says throw? It's taking the exception that was caught in this block and saying, okay, throw it out. Somebody else above me, somebody who's calling this method, is going to handle that exception and do something with it. So we throw it, okay? So, and I'll change that to, and if I put null in there, right, I'll get the same thing. All right, so there we go. And you can create your own exceptions if you want to be more verbose in how we interact with things. I've got 3 minutes left, chat, so I'm going to run through this real quick. If you want to define some other exceptions that have better information or a little bit cleaner defining what went wrong, I can do something like create a better division exception. And we saw about base classes. Well, there's a base class for an exception. So I can provide better division exception, and it's got different constructors here that I can work with. So I'm going to provide a message here, unable to divide by 0, if we get the divide by 0 error. And we can also provide a different message and an inner exception if something else happened further down the stack. And we have some default information that we're returning, but I'm also going to provide the dividend and divisor as properties on this exception so that I can inspect it later if I'd like. So now, right, I can put that if statement in here like I was talking about. So if the second argument is null, let's throw a better division exception and say cannot divide by null. And check this out. I'm going to wander over here. I'm also going to include the dividend and the divisor. This way, right, when I go and interact with this, I can actually get additional information. So now it tells me when I execute and I catch a better division exception, it says cannot divide by 0 and reports back information, right? This might be more helpful for you to include in your logger so you can inspect and get additional information. Now, once again, contrived example, but when you're working with things coming back from a database and interacting with it, this could be very important. Let me head back over to the desk. We're going to say goodbye to our friends that are watching over there on Learn TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you joining us. It's been a lot. We went through a lot here today, and that was... We had a lot of really good questions. I encourage you to check out the GitHub repository because it has the information. It has the notebook there for you. I'm even going to link directly into the notebook. There it is. There's links if you're watching the YouTube recording just below for you to grab that notebook. Take a walk through it. You can run it on Visual Studio Code on Windows, Mac, or Linux and learn more. Try it out. Try out some of these interactions and learn more about how this works. I really appreciate you joining me on this fine Monday. And I'm going to take a quick look here at chat. Let me see. Cool. All right. Let's call it a day. Thank you so much to all of you out there watching on YouTube. I appreciate you joining and appreciate you tuning in. Check out all the great videos on youtube.com/.net. I've got a series there about Blazor. This video is in the C# with CSharpFritz series. Make sure you check out some of our other shows, like on .net in our community stand-ups. Those of you that are over there on Twitch, let's set up for a raid. We're going to take you from our Visual Studio channel, going to magically whisk you to another channel on the big Twitch.tv network, get you connected with somebody else who's broadcasting and having a good time, writing some code, and I'm going to take a quick peek over here. Hey, that's me. You know what? Somebody was asking about... no. Let's check out who's in software and game development that we can raid. That's not bad. Taking a quick look to see if there's anybody here that we want to support who's doing some cool .NET stuff. Now, you know what? I think I'm going to take you over to our friend Tim, who's an independent developer. He's building a C++ game engine, and he's porting it to WebAssembly. So let me get you connected with Tim Bodette. He's a live coder, a member of the stream team that I manage here on Twitch. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you joining in. I hope the rest of you tune in sometime later today. The .NET Docs team, the Microsoft Docs team is going to be hosting their show, talking about cool things happening in documentations, samples. And a little bit later today, our friend Mads Christensen is going to be hosting Visual Studio Office Hours. I hope you tune in for that. Thank you so much, friends. I will see you next time. Get ready to say hi to our friend Tim over there on his channel, working with C++ and WebAssembly. Take care.